Damaged Defenders by Sherza. Chapter 100. Sam and Soldier. If there was one thing Sam had learned while pursuing his psychology degree, it was that people absolutely needed to talk about their problems. Bottling things up, repressing, whatever technical term you wanted to apply to it, that never led anywhere good. Because when you bottled stuff up, it grew and festered, and if you weren't careful, it would eventually poison everything in your life. Because as long as you didn't talk about whatever it was, there was no hope of truly dealing with it and finding a way to get on with your life, whether you got over whatever the problem was or not. And unlike some therapists, Sam was firmly of the opinion that there was some stuff people just could not get over and resume life as if nothing bad had happened. What stuff people couldn't get past varied from person to person, of course, but everyone had that line in the sand somewhere. A spot that if you got pushed past it, you weren't ever going to go back to being the person you were before you got pushed over the line. Not that you'd go through your life a damaged wreck from then on, of course. It was just that when you finally healed as much as you could, you wouldn't be quite the same as before. Of everyone on the team, Sam had been, and still was, the most worried about Steve and Loki. Loki, well, he couldn't do anything there. Yet, Loki was still bottling things up like a pro, until he started showing signs of wanting to talk about the stuff he'd been through, or until he broke under the strain. Sam knew he could talk himself to death and accomplish nothing. You couldn't help those that didn't think they needed help and thus weren't willing to listen. Steve had already started to crack under the strain before Sam got hired on. Sam had a feeling Steve had been cracking under the strain for a while, actually. Serum be screwed, there was only so much a person could go through without shattering like a Ming vase dropped onto a concrete floor from 50 feet up. Steve had lost literally everything, then been asked to not only adapt to a world that was as different from the one he'd left as chalk was from cheese, but to, once again, step up and lead a group of fighters in a war. That alone would have been enough to turn any normal person into a gibbering wreck curled up in the corner of a padded room. The mess with Barnes, and now Hydra? Yeah, no wonder Steve had shattered like that. Sam followed Steve down the stairs until they got to Barton's special range. Steve sort of folded into himself in a corner away from the big metal door. Sam plunked himself down beside him. So, not a fun discovery, I take it? Sam asked. A touch callous, perhaps, but Sam knew what was needed now. Right now, he needed to get Steve to vent, to spew as much of the poison that had been rotting in his gut since Sam was willing to bet Barnes fell off that train. The more they could lance that infected wound now, the better. Having said it all once, it would be that little bit easier for Steve to say it again later, and again, however many times it took to work his way through or around it. It took a few more, slightly insensitive pokes before Steve came out of his slump and started talking. Like in the gym, at first it was Gaelic. Very, very, very angry Gaelic. Sam didn't care. This wasn't about trying to talk Steve into a better frame of mind yet, which would require being able to understand what Steve was saying in order to nudge him in the right direction. Eventually, though, Steve returned to using English. He still sounded mad as hell, but now there was also a tired resignation and something like defeat in his tone. Given the circumstances, Sam could totally understand that. Still, he didn't say much of anything for a while, except the occasional poke when Steve started to go quiet. Though it must be said that Steve's idea of going quiet was the "I am contemplating just how many ways I can commit murder, I get away with it" sort. Because the more Steve talked, the more he got the anger under control. Which was good. Always. Even like this. It wasn't like Hydra weren't legitimate targets, after all. So long as Steve didn't get stupid or suicidal, Sam was of the opinion that he could kick however much Hydra but he wanted to avenge himself, Barnes, and the entire planet if that's the way he wanted to play it. You all knew, Steve said finally. Uh-oh. This part could get a bit sticky. Since we got back, Jarvis found out while digging up the folks Romanov told him about. Sam admitted. We just didn't say anything yesterday because we wanted to at least try to give you a day to relax and get some sleep after doing the realm tour before we dropped the hammer on you. Somehow I don't think you guys just sat on the knowledge, Steve said, which made Sam bark a laugh. Not a chance, Captain. If you're looking for targets, we've got a few handy. That made Steve look at him. Isn't this the kind of thing you're supposed to discourage? He asked, in the sort of tone that said he was going to kick butt regardless of what Sam said. Sam made a rude noise. Nah, man. These people deserve a good butt kicking or 10. You start making stupid decisions or trying suicide by a lackey, I'll call you on it and have Thor sit on you until you get your head screwed back on straight. But by all means, take your temper out on the folks that deserve to get punched in the teeth. Jarvis, get everyone up. Team meeting in 10 minutes, Steve growled, and told them to suit up. Oh boy, let the fun begin. Good thing Potts had gotten his wings out of whatever storage bin they'd been put in. He was going to need them. It was a good thing that he was used to fighting through incredible amounts of pain. He'd stopped being able to let Steve fight his own battles without backup a long time ago. So even though the word Hydra was like a bomb going off in his brain, he threw in with Steve against that big guy Thor. Sorting stuff out when that asshole Loki yanked him away took a few minutes. He didn't even notice when Loki turned him loose again. Because for the first time in 70 years, he remembered. He remembered who he had been, since he for sure wasn't that person anymore. Not after the last 70 years. Christ on a crutch. 70 years. Thank God most of that stuff was still a blank. But the before the war, Steve rescuing his sorry button, him traipsing off after the bunk to kick Hydra butt. Yeah, that he was remembering now. He even knew why Hydra had set off the memories. Or suspected why, at least. Because the last coherent memory he had before everything went blank was being surrounded by a ton of Hydra goons with guns and scientists. Which meant he'd known right from the first who he'd been captured by. He'd probably tried to keep that stuff tucked away somewhere so he could tell Steve and Phillips when he escaped, or they came for him, whichever came first. Except that never happened for whatever reasons, and things got all tangled together somehow. Oh, God, he had such a headache. He rubbed at his temples without really thinking about it. Unfortunately, he'd been, barely moving unless ordered. And he could still feel that urge, that fear of doing something that would get him punished, pushing at him, wanting to obey, to be still and silent. At any rate, him doing that got the attention of Coulson and the other two. Soldier? Coulson asked. He sounded concerned, but not in a "are you about to snap a kill us all" way. More of a "do you need help" way. He'd give the Avengers this much. They'd been as gentle with him as they could manage to be. And he was going to have to thank Stark for the arm. He did not want Hydra stuff anywhere near him ever again, unless he was blowing it right up. Also, he was gonna have words with God, fate, kismet, whatever ran things, because seriously, 70 years, and he's right back to following after Steve with a small group of special operators who were supplied in part by a Stark. At least the Stark fought with them too, otherwise he'd be freaking out! Not that he wasn't already. Quietly. Very quietly. 70 years. He knew how he had got here, but as soon as he was able, he and Steve were going to have words about how Steve got here without aging a day, because he just knew Steve hadn't lived through all that time. Soldier? Coulson asked again. Whoops. He fought down the new compulsion to be silent. It was surprisingly easy now. Or, easy-ish. He always had been stubborn. Had to be to deal with Steve. The punk could out-stubborn his own screwed-up body and any 10 men back before the idiot got himself juiced up, and it had only gotten worse after. And hadn't that been a fun fight after he'd been rescued that first time? Yeesh, Stevie, can't leave you on your own for 5 seconds and you're doing something that's liable to get you killed. What was that saying? Situation normal, all fucked up? Yeah, he still wanted to box the guy's ears for that stunt, because what idiot thought getting shut up with God knows what just so he could go to war was a good idea? He tell you, Steve, I'm an idiot, Grant Rogers. That's who. Idiots. At any rate, that stubborn streak of his was coming in handy now, made it easier to fight the conditioning. "Gonna need a gun," he said. That made all three of them blink and stare at him, startled. I don't think that would be wise as yet," Coulson said. He gave the man a flat glare. "Not staying behind," he insisted. "And if you return to your previous state?" Coulson asked. He shrugged. Won't matter. Good at target." That was really all that the soldier had cared about, having a target. He'd already decided to protect Steve's butt even before he remembered who he had been. So it would be ridiculously easy to go anyone shooting at Steve as a target, and if he kicked into that state of mind, there wouldn't be so much as a hiccup. It was Loki that spoke next. "You are being unusually chatty," Loki commented, peering closely at him. Whatever Loki saw, it gave him what he needed to know. Oh, I see. Well then, welcome back, Sergeant." Coulson squawked. "Loki!" "We agreed not to mention what he did not know. I know this. But look at him, Agent Coulson. He remembers. Mayhap not everything, but enough. More even than mere hours ago," Loki said. That had Coulson looking at him more closely. "Is he right?" "Yeah." And at that point, fighting the urge to keep his mouth shut became too much, and he resorted to writing on the pad he'd taken to keeping with him. "Still don't remember everything. Enough of it, though. Steve, me, the war. Cuts out after I got captured the second time. Saw a bunch of Hydra goons. Think that's why I'm remembering now. First time anyone's said that word around me. Then, under that, Steve's gonna go on the warpath, and either you yahoos give me a gun and let me tag along official-like, or I'll find my own and do it anyway. I owe the bastards a few dozen lumps." Coulson read the note and quirked an amused smile at... He really needed to get back into the groove of using the name, even if he was never really going to be Bucky ever again. Somehow he didn't think Steve would mind. It was pretty clear that whatever had happened after he fell off that train, that Steve hadn't come out the other side his old self either. They'd figure stuff out like they always had, as a team. Even if he had to occasionally clout Steve upside the head to knock some sense into him, someone had to, and he had the suspicion this lot hadn't figured out yet that Steve needed the occasional clout. Somehow that does not surprise me. Well, we will have a little time before Steve gets his feet back under him. Let's see how you handle the gun, and then we can plan accordingly," Coulson said. "Let's head to the range." Damn it. Bucky! He needed to remember to use the name. Bucky nodded agreement. Steve was gonna go to war, and soon, and Bucky intended to be there with him.